Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
Just like this funny guy, okay, this funny looking guy, Ismail Royer, has written about. We talked about Abdullah Andalusi saying it. We talked about Daniel Hakikachu saying it. And now Ismail Royer also saying it. Look at here, family. 1 second, y'all. This is from Ismail Royer, another long article, not as long as Hamza used this, but look at here. You don't know what critical race theory is by Ismail Royer. He says here, let's read through it. Traditional religions found truths and morality on God and reason. The Enlightenment, on the other hand, rejected God and instead attempts found truth and morality on reason alone. The postmodernists, this is what they always accuse CRT of postmodernism. Postmodernism. CRT ain't got nothing to do with no postmodernism and no postmodern anything, okay? CRT is the study of how the laws are used to implement racism. That's all CRT is. Anyways, postmodernist response to the Enlightenment is doomed to attempt to found truth and morality or reason alone was not to return to the faith of Enlightenment rejected, but instead of agreed to Enlightenment, the faith was untenable. God is dead and we have killed him. While also rejecting Enlightenment's embrace of reason and replace the faith of some, Enlightenment rejected God to keep to reason, while postmodernists reject God and reason and says claim truth and morality are merely exercises in power. That's why to a believer, now he's attaching his whole critique of CRT to what a believer is. Mind you, all these folks who say that CRT is Marxism and postmodernism, all kind of stuff, right? All these folks who say all this stuff never, ever prove it. Not one single shred of evidence, not one article provided as evidence. They make these vague assertions and these far-fetched comparisons to try to say CRT is Marxism. Right, which we'll see in a minute. Okay, watch here. So that's why to believer critique CRT by atheist liberals like Helen Pluckrose often make a lot of sense. Atheist liberals, okay? Because liberals are right insofar as they argue that the truth does exist, that reason helps the gas, but also why postmodernist critiques of Enlightenment also make sense to believers. Because postmodernists are correct in pointing out founding morality and reason alone is impossible, and that liberalism is merely a mirror image of bourgeois values in the 18th, 19th century and European Christians, which Enlightenment thinkers attempted to elevate to the status of universal truth while blowing up exponential foundation by rejecting God. Okay, all of this is just fluff. These guys, they do the same. If you watched my refutation of Abdullah Andalusi, I mean, watching his refutation of CRT was mind-numbing, right? It was just like a chore. It was, wallah, it was a chore. 3 hours, I had to sit 3 hours with that, and just to find out he didn't have any argument whatsoever. He just made a claim. This is what these folks do. They just make claims. But the CRT have the tools that is useful in understanding that nature of race-based injustice in America. Yes, but only in the sense that, for example, things like universal truth and objectivity are in fact quite often are false, quite often have historical roots, quite often serve an agenda to those in political power. But this insight is hardly unique to CRT. I don't even understand why he wrote this. But anyways, and in fact, postmodernism generalizes the fact that some truths are claimed on more products at the same place, and conclusion all truths are claimed on products at the same time and place. Thus, the adoption of CRT in the extent that believers is a serious mistake. Thus, the adoption of CRT by any extent by believers is a serious mistake. Thus, the adoption of CRT by any extent by believers is a serious mistake. He literally said a whole bunch of nothing and saying that the adoption of how do you adopt CRT? How do you adopt CRT? Either the thing happened or it didn't happen, because it is both unnecessary and that it is true insights are not unique to it and corrosive to faith. He claims that CRT is corrosive to faith, y'all. That's the claim. Then he continues, okay? But didn't Muslims and Christians incorporate such much of Aristotle's thought? Yes, in a sense, but not the same thing. Historically, see, he goes on to say that Muslims incorporated Aristotle, which is okay. Aristotle is a philosopher, so philosophy can be accepted or rejected. But CRT is history. Either it happened or it didn't happen. But if you accept the actual historic events of the situation, it's corrosive to faith. That's what he claims. That's what he claims. Because according to him, CRT is Marxism. Historic Islamic scholars benefit from the wisdom of a great many people and cultures of pre-Islamic Arabs to Greece, Persia, beyond. but they rejected the very notion of truth and reason. This is ridiculous. I can't believe what I'm reading here. There is very little to benefit and much harm to attempting to incorporate wisdom and a strand of thought which rejects the very foundation of faith and indeed irrational thought itself, which allows a faith, especially in any insights, a strand of thought that might have are to be found elsewhere. Islamic scholars spent no energy attempting to derive benefits from barren ideas and methodologies like Sufism, for example, which postmodernism in many ways resembles. This is some of the most incoherent crap. And then you find, immigrant Muslims all over the place eating this stuff up and trying to repeat this stuff to black folk. And they just sound crazy. This whole diatribe is just incoherent. So wait a second. They rejected Sufism, but accepted Aristotle? Like what?
That's stupid.
You said this all in one paragraph, y'all. Like this is crazy, man. This is crazy. I want to find where he says that CRT comes from Marxism. 1 second, y'all. Let me try to find it, y'all. Let me just look through this. Hold it. Here it is. Okay, CRT adopts many aspects of Marxism. Okay, that's the point we're trying to get. CRT's adopted many aspects of Marxism. Okay, as substantial racial struggle and class struggle, but ultimately it rejects enlightened theological myth of progress that Marxism shares with Enlightenment ideologies. Look here, family. Let me tell y'all something. Okay, Karl Marx. Do y'all know when Karl Marx when he lived? Who knows when Karl Marx was around? Anyone want to give it a shot? Okay, Karl Marx was around. He was born in 1818. He died in 1883. The Communist Manifesto was published in 1848. Das Kapital was published, I believe, in, I want to say 1867, but other volumes and works where it's kind of like revised and stuff like that. But I want to say around the late 1860s, right, for Das Kapital. But for sure, the Communist Manifesto, 1848. Okay, for sure, 100%. Okay, he was born in Prussia, 1818, family. 1818, okay? Look at here, family. During the presidency of Thomas Jefferson, it was in 1787, there was a huge conundrum because the colonies were trying to form this new country, and the issue of representation came up. So the South, they had the most slaves, and they said, we want to make our slaves a part of the population for representation for this new country. And the North was like, Negroes? Negroes, they're not people. They ain't people. You can't be represented by Negroes. And the South said, well, you're not going to let us use our Negroes to represent. Mind you, the entire time, they didn't believe that black folks were human beings, okay? They didn't believe that black people were a part of the human race. They believed that they were cursed. They believed that they were meant to be perpetual chattel into infinitum. This was the belief held by a Caracas, okay, in the 1700s. Were they Marxist? Were these folks Marxist? Some 40 years before Karl Marx was even born, almost 100 years before the publication of Das Kapital came out. Were they Marxist? Were they complaining? The North was complaining you cannot use Negroes to represent you, and the South was trying to run game because they had the most slaves and they were just trying to get the most representation in the electoral colleges. So they came up with something called the 3/5 Compromise. What is a 3/5 Compromise? The 3/5 Compromise was that for every 5 slaves that you have down there in the South, we will allow you to count them as 3 as representation for the electoral college, okay? That's what it was. Was this Marxism in 1787? Was this Marxism, family? Yes or no? So let me ask y'all something. These laws, which were racially charged in order to exploit the usage of black bodies for representation in the actual U.S. Constitution, was this Marxism? What are you talking about today? What are you saying? What are you saying? So when somebody points this out as being an actual thing that actually happened in actual history, they accuse you of being a Marxist. The 3/5 Compromise. Racially charged laws. Y'all can't make this up. Dred Scott, born in 1799. We talked about him before on this channel, and he died in 1858. Dred Scott was a slave. Long story short, essentially, he was re-kidnapped, or rather his wife was re-kidnapped in a free state.
Paper gold. You see, black folks are chumps. If America were to tell you to bring all the rocks in this country to her, and she'll give you $1 million for it, you'll do it. And the next day she'll tell you we using rocks for currencies, chump.